Okay, hi everybody. David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation. Back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast. So today I'm joined by film composer Karl Preusser. Karl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
All
Thanks
right. Yes, you're back in Massachusetts, close to where you went for your film scoring degree at Berklee.
True. Yep.
Some years ago, as I looked up in your IMDb, you have over 50 credits, so it's not like you just started yesterday.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and we were just talking a little bit before we got started here. You've worked on some really very famous movies: Die Hard 3, Mr. Holland's Opus, Batman Forever, and some less famous ones too. I want to ask you which ones you enjoy working on more than others, maybe. But what's your fondest memory so far of anything that you've done in film scoring?
Wow. Well, working on those big films, when I first moved to Los Angeles in '94, I had the chance to work as an assistant for a music editor named Chris Brooks. And through his working with him and his team, I ended up getting to work alongside composers like Elliot, Goldenthal, and Michael Kamen on those films. And man, it was such a learning experience, and I'm totally grateful for that experience. To kind of arrive in town and kind of see how it works at the highest level, and then as you start to build your career from from starting out, kind of learn those lessons early and try to move forward, in the right direction.
Yeah, was everything kind of as you expected it would be, or were there a lot of surprises along the way? How did it go for you transitioning from coming out of film school to being in these pretty big pictures, really?
In my mind, I would like to think that, I was really dialed in and everything, but I'm sure that I came across as pretty green. I think that's part of the learning curve. The advice I would give to young composers coming out into that situation where suddenly you're kind of dropped into the frying pan of post-production and the entertainment business is just you're there to give. You're there to help out however you can. You want to be the person that they can't imagine doing it without you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you. You got to just like be a part of the team and give everything you can to the project, and it matters. People see that. And I hope that's what I did. It's what I tried to, on those projects.
Yeah, well, you've been very successful, so I'm sure that's true. We don't
Appreciate
share we don't share the video. We just post the audio, but I can see you've got a lot of guitars behind you. So
it.
congratulations
Yeah.
on that. I guess that's how you started in music. Is that true?
Yes, I was a child of the '80s, and I grew up. I had hair down to my, long hair, and
As long
I
as it would
grew up.
go, right?
I,
Right.
I was a metalhead, and
Yeah.
I was determined to be Eddie Van Halen, like a lot of kids my age back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
I practiced on this guitar back here behind me, as much as I could, and I ended up going to Berklee as a guitar player.
Okay.
Uh, while I was there, after my first year, I ended up getting career-ending tendonitis.
Oh goodness. Okay.
And so now I'm at Berklee and I'm faced with not being able to play an instrument anymore. And I had developed a fascination with writing. I was taking more and more writing classes. It seemed like a natural transition. So I switched my major to film composing and kind of took off with that. And then after I graduated, I packed up a U-Haul and I was out in LA a week later.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a couple questions about that because that's something that I can relate to both in a couple of ways. First of all, when I was born in 64, so by the
Okay.
time I got to 81, I was graduating high school, I too started listening to heavy metal,
Yeah.
I too had I had a Gibson Flying V, and
Cool.
I was trying to do the Michael Schenker leads from Rock Bottom, and I was trying to do Glenn Tipton on Judas Priest and all that kind of stuff, and I stuck with it for a while, and then college got the better of me on that really. But I do appreciate all of that and all the technical aspects of doing all those leads in heavy metal. And then there's quite a connection, I think, between all that and what happens in classical music too. If you want to
Certainly.
find it, if you don't want to find it, you don't have to. But if you want to find it, yeah, you agree with me. That's great. But
Absolutely.
but another thing, I never got tendonitis from any of the music that I've done. I've never had really serious injuries from the practicing that I've done, either on piano, sax, or guitar. But my piano teacher, who's passed away, my second classical teacher, Donna, who did tour, had career-ending tendonitis in her left arm, I believe it was, and I could never really wrap my head around how it is that you keep going when you have that level of pain. Except that as a tennis player, I had tendonitis twice on the outside of my right arm and once on the inside, which is golfer's elbow.
Yeah.
And it really, lasted a long time, multiple years until it went away. So let's get back to a question, which is like, how is it when you're trying to improve and you're going to Berklee, right? So the
Yeah.
pressure's on. And I know many people practice a long time. I follow Eric Marienthal in saxophone. He said he used to practice 9, 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
How do you do that without getting injured? And when you are injured, what can you do to help get around that and keep making progress so that it isn't a career-ending injury?
Well, my situation was a little different. When I got back from my first year at Berklee, I had a lung collapse.
Goodness.
And so I ended up having lung surgery. And these days it would be just a little small hole where they put in a little scope thing and it fixes it like that. But back then it was a 10-inch cut.
Hmm.
And it kind of wrecked my upper body circulation, uh, which I
Got it.
wasn't really aware of. So I go back to Berklee the next year without proper circulation going on, and I
Hmm.
go back to my routine of, like you said, practicing 8 hours a day, not sleeping right, not eating right, partying too hard,
Hmm.
being a college kid. And I kind of just fell apart over the course of a few months, and I did all the physical therapy, I did all the acupuncture, I did everything I could do, and I
Yep.
think that it just wasn't it. I play now. I can still play, but like to play at the level that I was at back then, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails when you're not playing where you used to be.
Yeah.
And since I was becoming more and more fascinated with writing, it kind of was like almost a positive in my. I turned it into a positive,
There you go.
because composing is certainly much more who I am as a person, I think, than playing and performing.
Well, those
Uh,
reframing things, like you just say, you didn't use that psychological term, but that's what it is, right?
yeah,
Be able to reframe something and move on from it
yeah.
and move it on as a positive. That's really tremendous. So, I mean, congratulations to you for being able to do that and do it so well. You did it
Uh,
great.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride. It would have been fun to be a rock star, though, right?
Yeah, for a while, probably. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
you don't know what doors would have opened or closed in that direction either,
It's
right?
true.
So, yeah. When you're working in Die Hard 3 or Mr. Holland's Opus, Batman, anything like that, do you get to go out and be when they're recording with the orchestra, or is your work more post production, or is it both? What kind of things did you get to do and still do?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be there with the orchestra for all those films. The two things that stick out to me, Batman Forever, we recorded at the Fox stage,
Hmm.
which is an iconic stage where they recorded the Wizard of Oz score and all kinds of things. So just to get
Oh,
to visit that, it was almost like the cathedral of film composing in a way.
yeah.
And the other interesting thing was for Die Hard 3, we actually ended up, that was the first film that was recorded in the Seattle area with the Seattle Orchestra.
Okay.
Uh, Before they kind of had their operation up and running, we brought in a recording truck from across the country and we found a church there in Bothell that we recorded at. And it was kind of the first time that Seattle recording operation kind of got up and running was for that film. And so, it's like we got to spend like a couple of weeks in a church in the woods recording this beautiful orchestra. It was really, really fascinating and a good time.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Now, you've done some documentaries, including I think maybe a Star Wars documentary. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I recently just did a documentary called A Disturbance in the Force.
Okay.
It's the true story of the 1978 CBS Star Wars holiday special.
Okay. Tell me more. I don't remember that one. I should though.
So it's a little niche in Star Wars history, Star
Yeah.
Wars fandom and canon, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And what happened is in 1977 Star Wars comes out, and they didn't have the toys ready. So here's this big hit movie. Here comes Christmas, and they don't have the toys ready. And so the next year in 78, they had the toys ready for Christmas, but no movie to promote it. So somebody got the really bad idea, probably, of creating the CBS Star Wars Holiday Special.
Okay.
And it's widely considered to be some of the worst television ever made. I personally love it. What happened is George Lucas hated it. He'd like take my name off it. I want it destroyed. I
Hmm.
want to destroy all the tapes, and it never aired again. But in the late 70s, some people had early VCRs, and it
Yes.
got recorded, and so
Yes.
videotape started circulating at the conventions, and it became this like cult classic film that everybody like wanted to get their hands on, and him wanting to get rid of it made them want it more.
Right.
And so the documentary tells the whole story of how this got made and how this thing came to be in Star Wars history. It's a unique chapter in Star Wars history as well because they weren't really dialed into the culture and the story and the franchise yet in the early 70s or in the late 70s, excuse me. But
Yeah, I guess they all had high hopes for it. I remember I was 13 back then. I saw that movie probably 20 plus times, but very convenient to go while my mom was shopping.
yeah.
That was great. But but they probably didn't know that they were going to have as big a hit as they were going to have. And so Empire Strikes Back was 1980 or 81 or something like that, I think. So they had a little time to do exactly like you just said. Wonder how we're going to sell these toys. So
Yeah, uh, scoring that film was just one of the highlights of my career, just for my own personal reasons. When I was 6 years old, my dad took me to Star Wars, and it blew my mind. And
mhm.
a couple weeks later, I went, I was a little kid. I went over to the piano teacher's house across the street, and I knocked on the door all by myself, and I said, "Will you teach me how to play Star Wars?"
Yeah.
And that was kind of the beginning of my musical journey, with John Williams and everything like that, and you get sidetracked by different things in life and playing guitar and wanting to be a rock star and all that stuff. But here I am, circling back, getting a chance to score this movie, and the debate in the Star Wars fan community is the Star Wars holiday special canon or is it not canon? And without a doubt, I decided that the way that I would like to score this movie, and it's what we ended up doing, was we're going to score it as canon, which means you get the opportunity to do some music that is reminiscent of Star Wars, and rather than copy like this immortal work of music, my
Mhm.
thought was rather than doing anything similar, let's just try to write more of it in a sense, and because I wanted to evoke a Star Wars feel to say this is canon,
Mhm.
the current makers of Star Wars, they all believe it to be canon and they hide all kinds of Easter eggs in the new shows and everything.
Ah,
It's a really funny, fun documentary, it's a good time.
sounds like something to look up when I have a little time post the first round Grammys here.
Oh, it's
So
definitely entertaining, that's for sure.
I'll do that. What are you working on now?
I just finished, well, actually, I just had a film come out in theaters recently called Hell House LLC Lineage.
Ah, yes.
It's the fifth movie in the Hell House LLC series.
Okay.
Uh, it was a little different because they did this one as a narrative feature, whereas the other ones are found footage films.
Hmm.
And I had a blast doing it. I'm really proud of the score. We have the soundtrack, I believe, is streaming now, and then it's coming out in CD in October with the release of the film on Shutter Films.
Okay.
Right now, as far as the right now, I'm actually editing. I sometimes direct documentaries, and I'm editing a documentary that I'm working on right now called The Fools, about a band called The Fools from the late 70s and early 80s. They were a struggling band in the New England area, and on a laugh, they made a spoof recording of Psycho Killer by Talking Heads
Yeah.
called Psycho Chicken, where they make like chicken noises and stuff.
Okay.
And it became an international hit. And they ended up getting signed to EMI and like taking the rocket ride. And they toured with
Oh,
Van Halen on the Fair Warning tour, and then like all good rock and roll stories, you have the spiral and the fizzle, but then they kept going and they kept going. And now these guys are all, older gentlemen in their 70s.
yeah.
And the band is still going strong after 50 years of uninterrupted Fools entertainment. So it's quite a story, and I've had a good time hanging out with them and working on the film. And I believe that hopefully people have a good time with it because that's
Yeah.
what they're all about.
Are you directing that as well or just doing the
Yeah,
story?
I'm directing that.
Uh-huh.
Filming. I kind of caught the story bug, just studying story for the sake of being a better film composer. I wanted to be able to speak with directors more intelligently, understand story better and doing that work. And I kind of caught the bug. My wife and I volunteered with the Burbank Rose Parade float for a few years, and I noticed that there was like a yearly story happening there every year and getting those floats ready. And
Yeah.
so I ended up making a documentary about that. And it's like the thing I love about making docs is it gets you out into the world and you meet all kinds of people you wouldn't meet normally and you have all kinds of weird adventures that you wouldn't normally have and everything. And I was like, it's not about the finished project even, it's about the experience of it all. And I knew that I would like to do that again, but rather than try to think up in my head, what would you like to make a movie about? I just kind of trusted that the right story would come across my path, at some point, and along comes this Psycho Chicken song. It's bad, and I've had a good time with it,
Well, they
definitely.
say truth is stranger than fiction, and one truth that you told me that's not like stranger than fiction, but it's a nice coincidence is something about your great great uncle. You want to share that one?
My whole life, growing up, I thought that I came from a non-musical family. I never had any relatives that I knew of that were into music or anything like that. And then in my 30s, I got an interest in history, and I decided I might want to, research my family history. So I contacted some long lost relative or something, and they said, "Oh, don't bother. My sister already did all that. She's got all of it. She'll send it to you." So she sends me all the stuff, and it turns out that my great great uncle, Walter Reginald Bland, was the founder of the Pasadena Symphony, the symphony orchestra that was like 10 minutes down the road from where I lived at the time. I went down there and met them, and there's his oil painting on the office wall, my relative, and it was kind of interesting to find out that it turns out I do have a musical family, and I just didn't know it. That we hadn't kept in touch with that side of our family, as far as knowing all that information. And I ended up volunteering with the orchestra for a few years, and it was an absolutely great experience. That's a fantastic orchestra. Orchestras are having a tough time these days, and I hope that we can keep supporting that orchestra and keep it rolling strong, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy where orchestras are having generally a tough time. And the last stat that I saw was something like the majority, maybe it's not more than 50%, it might be 40% of revenues to orchestras on average are from donations, not from ticket sales. So most revenue, quote unquote, I think we could say this, most revenue to orchestras comes not from ticket sales, but from generous donors who want to keep them alive. And yet also we have smaller orchestras that are starting and I guess we could say competing a little bit, but I tend to look at it as like the rising tide lifting all ships. So as long as we can keep the atmosphere for symphony music, orchestral music as strong as we can and grow it from here, which is fairly, I think, hopefully easy to do since the last I saw for Nielsen ratings was at 1% for classical. So,
Well, I think, in a world of AI and streaming and everything, we're seeing this especially coming out of COVID, we're seeing this resurgence in people wanting to go out and see live music again. If you've bought a concert ticket recently, those prices are way up there.
mhm.
And if the demand wasn't there, people wouldn't pay those prices. And hopefully some of that energy and some of that people wanting to get out and hear live music and live players in a world that's going more and more AI and digital transfers over to the orchestral community. I think and I think it's an important part of our culture and an important part of who we are.
Well, you mentioned something, Carl, and I had the same feeling. I was a little older than you, I guess, at the time. But when we both went to see Star Wars, it changed our lives. And the music is transformative, and it can still be that way. And hopefully, we'll get more young people to not only enjoy it in film and video games now, but also just going to hear it performed live.
Absolutely. I think it's important to expose young people to different types of all forms of art at a young age.
Yeah.
You never know what a young person is going to latch onto, and great things could come from that.
Yeah. Carl, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on Facebook. I'm wide open on there. I'd appreciate, anybody that would like to talk, getting a hold of me.
Well, that's how I got a hold of you. It works. So everybody go find Carl on
Awesome.
Facebook and reach out, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to speak with you. Carl, we're going to listen to some more of your great music on the way out here. And as always, if there's anything we can do at the Symphonina Foundation to be of help to you, just let us know.
Vice versa. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So